Welcome to our 9th and final meeting of the year. I'm glad to have everyone here in the room and online. Seems appropriate that the year started off with a whole host of technical difficulties, and we're going to end the year with a whole host of technical difficulties. But we had the fun ones this time. The other one was just a hot mess. So sorry for the delay here. We'll get things going here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for this evening. It is Brenda Philips. She is a research professor at the College of Engineering at the University of Massachusetts, and also the co-director of the Paros Center for Atmospheric Research at UMass. She's gotten her degrees at Yale and at UMass. She has worked for both CIRO and CASA, and has also participated in a number of national advisory works. Her work focuses on bridging various aspects of various components like physical, technical, social components into the weather warning system through collaborations with the folks here at the North Central Texas Council of Governments and with other agencies. She's helped to establish the CASA Radar Network that's right here in DFW. And that's been going on now for 10 years. It's been a well-proven system. So she's going to be talking about the DFW network here and how it has helped severe weather operations and research. So I will get the presentation lit up and I will turn it over to Brenda here. And I have to enter an email. We'll find out. Everyone gets to watch me type. Now I'm waiting for
nothing like live.
Yes, here we go. Oh, listen. There we go. We're getting there. Right. Let's see here. Share screen. Okay. I'm assuming everyone is seeing this, right, Dave?
Yep, it's coming up full screen now.
Awesome. Here is Brenda.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for waiting. What I thought I would do in this presentation.
I was going to say, I'm so sorry. So if you could send me the link, then I can get it posted up here so we can at least follow this.
My apologies. We can't see it in the room.
I'm so sorry, Brenda. Like, this is the worst.
Okay. And we're going to, I guess I can just forward this to. All right, should be on your way.
Yeah, we're good. I'm so sorry. I'll get it up there.
Okay. Okay, so I am Brenda Philips, very pleased to be here. And this presentation is going to have two parts. In the first part, I want to talk about just what the CASA Radar Network is, and then give you a couple of examples of how it's been used in operations. And then in the second part, I want to talk about a research project that I've been involved with folks in the city of Fort Worth, folks at the National Weather Service, two hydrology faculty members, to really think about how you can improve flash flood warning and really looking at it from sensor all the way out to how people respond. So there'll be two parts. I thought maybe I'd stop in the middle because they're two very different kinds of discussions. So this first part, oh, I'm doing this.
Oh, sorry. Did I get you on? Yes, no.
So I'm using this. Which one am I using?
Should be on here.
Okay, got it. Okay, so first of all, what is CASA? It's a cutting-edge warning system centered around X-band radars. And the CASA radars were developed through a National Science Foundation research grant. It was a 10-year grant. And we basically prototyped the radars and set them up in Oklahoma. And that was from about, I guess, 2003 to 2013. And then when that grant was over, we moved them down to the Texas area, and we created this collaboration with the region through the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And so we're also a multi-sector partnership that basically funds and operates and uses the radar. And so we're using the data in real time at the same time that we're doing research. And so at that way, we're able to continue to advance the technology and its application. And what you see there is the footprint of our radar network. You can see that we have these overlapping radars. Each radar goes out about 25 miles. You can see some of the rings are bigger. Oh, you guys can't see anything, can you? Yeah, you can see that. There's the network there. And it really covers most of the DFW Metroplex. So, the 8 million people who are in the area. And so it's not only just the sensors though. So we are shipping the data to the National Weather Service, and they see it in their decision-making systems. That's called AWIPS, and they're using it for warning. We have a website for emergency managers to look at it in real time. We have various products, everything from rainfall to wind and hail, where we do customized products for different usages, which people find very useful. And we're operating very tightly with different users. So I talked about the public safety users, this National Weather Service. We have an app, and so there are about 4,000 people or so who've downloaded the app. The app is called CASA Alerts, and you can get it on Google Play or in the App Store. And the interesting thing about that app is that you can basically specify your warning preferences. So you can say, I want to know when, 3 inches of rainfall is 10 miles away from me, and it'll monitor your current location and give you these personalized warnings. So we're seeing that as a real-time tool and also as a way of advancing warning.
Would you do it for like the wind? If you wanted to know when the winds are coming your way before they get to you?
We're doing winds, but we're doing them actually through, what we're doing is we're collecting the local storm reports, and then we'll report those. So we have those. The velocity data that we have is tricky to be able to analyze that and have confidence in real time. So we're not doing that. We're not doing that right now. But we actually do rain. So like if it's raining more than, if the instantaneous rain rate is more than 3 inches an hour, so it means that if it were to rain an hour, it'd be more than 3 inches. We send people a note, an alert saying, hey, it's raining hard. So I just want to step back a little and just talk a little bit about the radars and the idea. It sounds like people are radar people, so you probably know this already, but basically we have the network of the large 150 or so radars around the country, and those radars are spaced 200 miles or so apart. But what happens is the beam actually goes straight out and the Earth curves away. So as you get further and further away from the radar itself, you have this observation gap. And the other thing that happens is, if you can think about a radar beam almost as like a flashlight, it's spread. So the further out you go, the coarser the data is. So you have both the problem of coarse data and that you're not seeing down low. And we know that a lot of severe weather, it develops in the lowest levels and it impacts people in the lowest levels. So you really want to look at those those levels. So what we did with CASA is we decided that we would fill in those gaps, both the spatial gap and also the temporal gap, because we are scanning our radar scan every minute. And also that it's very high resolution. So it's about 60-meter gate spacing. So if you think of this beam, if the beam is going out, it's every 60 meters. And they're overlapping so that you continuously get these low-level views of the weather. And so we tested this out in Oklahoma, and then after the initial grant that we had was over, we decided to move it down here. And so through the Fort Worth emergency manager, who was at that time, his name was Juan Ortiz. You know him? Yeah, he's down in Austin now. And then Bill Bunting was at the Weather Service then, and then also Molly McFadden from the COG. And so they came together and said, we want a radar network like this. And so they put together basically the consortium that led the radars and led the, I'm going to talk about this and I'll go back to the advantages of the radar in a bit. So basically the NetCog is facilitating that, and now Amanda Everly is involved in that, along with Maribel Martinez, and we have an executive committee. Chase Wheeler from Grand Prairie is the chair of the executive committee, and Will Wessel from Tarrant County, he's the other co-chair, and we have a committee of media, and they set local policy. And then NetCog has actually created a fee structure that actually supports the operations of the radar. And communities pay into that fee structure annually. And so that supports the operations of the radar. And so there's that as a funding mechanism. We also get money indirectly from the National Weather Service through the National Mesonet program. We also have gotten quite a few National Science Foundation grants to advance the technology, and a lot of that research actually ends up in the network, so it's an advantage to the community. And then we have industry sponsorships. We've worked with Raytheon. We're working very closely with DFW Airport right now. And so it really is this very vibrant multi-sector partnership that we have.
Do other large metropolitan areas also have something like this?
No, this is actually unique in the country. Yeah.
It's too bad.
I remember last year, they had a tornado strike over in River Oaks that the regular radar from Sphinx didn't even see it. Had been for the CASA radar, they would have never known that small tornado was in the area over there.
Yeah. That was, I think Ted Ryan, who's the Science and Operations Officer over at NWS, he got interviewed on TV and talked about that one. So there've been a few that we've been able to see in the CASA radar that the NextRed radar hasn't been able to see. It's also very useful once a tornado warning is issued, and that may be issued with the NextRed data. They can actually kind of really track it almost on a street by street level with the CASA data. And then if they are going to do damage assessments, they use the CASA radar all the time to actually locate where they're going. And that's this great way of validating the data that it's actually quite accurate. And so they're able to do that. So this is just some more about the multi-sector partnership and all the cities who are involved. This may not be an accurate list, and somebody may get mad at me because someone is on, it's supposed to be on. But anyway, this is just to give you a sense that it really does have pretty broad support across the region. So I wanted to talk about the operational use of the radars, and this is a quote from, again, Ted Bryan, the Science and Operations Officer, talking about how he used it last year on April 4th. There was a tornado that was in Johnson County, kind of went through Joshua and then extended towards Midlothian. You remember that one? Okay, so they used that, they used the CASA radar extensively, and in that, for that tornado, that had actually 2 circulations, and you couldn't really see the 2 circulations on NextRad, but you could see it on the CASA data. I'm going to show you, I'll show you that, but basically, they were able to, you know, with the 1-minute updates, and 2 minutes is good. I mean, NextRad goes to 2-minute updates during severe weather, but when you have a rapidly evolving event, you know, having the 1 minute is good, and then having the high resolution. And also keep in mind that this is like right on top of the NextRad radar, and you're still seeing advantages. So this is really a resolution, a spatial resolution advantage, as well as a temporal resolution advantage. So I'm going to let me show you this video, and I can go back to it when they can display it, because it's it's good eye candy. So this, wait, let me just, I'll tell you one more thing. What you're looking at right now is the this is the Midlothian radar right here, and you're looking at the weather kind of coming into this edge of the Midlothian radar, just so you have a sense of where things are here. Okay, so hopefully this is going to work. Oh no. I think the we're going to have to go back to that, because it's an animation and you can see the detail. This is the reflectivity here. You can see a little bit of the hook here, right here, of the tornado, and then this is the velocity data, the wind data. And then you can see the tornado, the 2 circulations right here. So I think when we get everything, we'll try to do the animation, because the animation is actually pretty cool.
This is like the 6th workaround.
When you do the wind data, can you do the data just like they do with the Doppler and see the inbound and outbound?
Yeah, this is what you're seeing right here.
Okay.
This bright, this is the here's the inbound and the outbound.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's just like the Doppler radars.
And they lay that over the in a computer situation, see both of them overlay each other and see what one's seeing and see the other one overlaid.
You mean looking at the reflectivity and the velocity at the same time?
Yeah, both of them at the same time. Like,
yeah.
We take one radar, put it here, and then put the other radar over it, and look at both of them and go, oh, okay, this is seeing this, this is seeing that.
You know, I don't know if they do that. I know they get it into, I know they, oh, there you go. You know, when they get it into AWIPS, they have all kinds of tools that they can use to look at things side by side, or where you put the cursor on one point and then it goes on the other. And that way they're able to, you know, really compare the two radars and try to learn about them. Is that going to work as a movie?
Is it, which one?
It's these two are supposed to, they're supposed to roll up as a movie. Okay, but in any case, the here, I guess I can do this now. Oh no, that's okay. This is the circulation in the reflectivity data, kind of the hook that you see, and then this is it here and here in the velocity data. This is high level wind, so this is this front kind of coming in towards this way. This is the center of the radar, you can see here, so it's coming towards the radar here. So then the other thing that we have is a hydrometeor classification product, where we can distinguish between rain and snow and hail and ice. And we've used this to develop a hail product. And this is a favorite of the emergency managers because it's a very, very straightforward product. And so basically,
good in 95.
Yes.
When we had I call it L-Fest, the Mayfest.
Yeah, that was
biggest hell I've ever seen.
And so that tannish orangish color is basically a hail core, and that updates every 5 minutes. And although we're not doing any forecasts, if you're looking at this over time as it's moving through an area, you can really get a sense of what the trajectory of the hail is. And so the emergency managers find it really useful for figuring out, you know, are they going to get hit? This product does not tell you size. We're working on that, but it does capture usually hail that's an inch or bigger, which is, you know, what you're concerned about.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, this is actually a hybrid product that combines both the CASA and the NextRed data to be produced. And it's been developed by a faculty member named Chandra. He has a long Indian name, V. Chandrasekhar, so we call him Chandra. And he's developed all of our, you know, either hydromedia or our quantitative precipitation estimation algorithms. And he has a great way of being able to, you know, do the research and validate it, and then allow us to port the product into a usable product that the community can use. So it's a great part of the project. So that's what I wanted to. Oh wait, one thing. This is this is the app, which is next, and this is just showing you some of the screens on the app where you can basically. These are the preferences where you can say, I'd like to know about these hazards. And then you can specify the distance, and we do it by distance right now. And then you can specify specific locations, including your current location. So there's a, you know, church, grandma, gym, home. And then we will send these personalized alerts to you. And so we've been doing that for a while. Now, the other interesting thing is we've instrumented this as a research tool. And so we will sometimes send surveys to people with the apps and say, did you experience this kind of weather? What did you do? And the interesting thing is that we know where they were when they got it. And then we also know what kind of weather they were experiencing. So we did experiments where we asked people, is it raining hard? Because we don't really know when the radar says it's raining 3 inches an hour. Do people think that's hard rain? Are they going to do anything or not? We don't really know that. And so from that analysis, what we learned was that people in Texas, and I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm a wimp. They really don't start changing their behavior to the rain. It's like 3 inches an hour, and it's very, very, very heavy. And that's what they consider heavy rain. So it's interesting to think about warning and messaging people. If you want people to do something at 2 inches of rain, you're going to have to really talk to them, because naturally, you know, they're not really bothered by it, and they're not really changing their activities.
It gets so loud, or you can't see across the street or see from your hand. That's when I start worrying about it.
Right. So it's interesting that we would be able, if you answered that survey and we knew what was over you, we could start to make those correlations. So we're doing things like that. So again, you see this kind of where we have operational technology out there, but we are also doing research with it at the same time. And that's kind of a theme that we have with the project.
For continuous development.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so now I'd like to just talk about this research that we're doing on flash flood warning, and this will be more like a case study that I'd like to talk to you folks about. I guess I could stop and see, does anybody else have any other questions, either online or here, just about the program in general before I go on to do this case? Okay, great. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the people who've been working on this case for a while. And interestingly enough, it's a case from 2018 that we decided to really drill down on, and we have tons of data, and we're doing a lot of analysis on it. So, you know, if you think about the current flash flood warning system and the challenges, you know, if you think about how the system works, basically the National Weather Service is monitoring weather, issuing warnings when they think there's sufficient risk, and then monitoring as the event unfolds to give the community more information about how serious the flooding might be. And the city's job is that they address local response. So they close roads, they respond to calls if people need to be rescued. They may send out their own local alerts to people, but they have responsibility for local response. And the public, we are supposed to turn around and not drown and become situationally aware. But, there are all kinds of challenges with the system. It's very hard, especially in Texas, because it rains all the time and it floods all the time. And it's hard to know which ones are going to cause, significant flash floods and which ones aren't. So it's hard to do that on a very geographically precise level that would be relevant to either an individual's or the city's decision making. And so, as a result, the city typically is very reactive. They wait till they get calls, or they have their stormwater people out there. And I'm generalizing, there are always exceptions to this, but this is what we've seen in talking to people. They will send out storm people in advance, and they know the usual areas. But it's a more reactive than a proactive response. And we also see that there quite a few flood fatalities happen to people in cars. So clearly people are not turning around and don't drown.
Last week, Dallas, there was a street that just flooded real fast and people went right through it like it was nothing.
Yeah, and there are lots of reasons to do that. So what we did was, we took a look at, there's a September 8th, 2018 flash flood warning system analysis. And we tried to take this end-to-end look at it. And this was the one that resulted in two deaths. There were 2 motorist deaths. It was mostly in the city of Fort Worth. You can see it here. The area of interest is this area right around Lake Arlington. Oh, your neighborhood, yeah. And this was, there was a lot of, there were like 2 or 3 days of consecutive flooding. And so by the time this came, the water was very saturated. And then one of these training storms that just dumped a lot of water right over that area happened. And there was a lot of flooding, like 2 feet kind of flooding around that area. And so we wanted to look at this and look at the current sources of information. CASA data was available then, but wasn't really being used in real time. We didn't have it on the National Weather Service's AWIPS. Yeah.
Well, I was in a situation last Saturday night in South Valparaiso. We had a flood, sort of flood. What happened was on Interstate 35 area had construction going on. Well, they tried to compensate for flood waters, flood waters, but it just came down so hard that it ended up flooding the freeway. It got knee deep and cars were stuck.
Yeah.
It's one of those that nobody could anticipate.
Yeah. And one of the things you'll see when we get to the public response part is, everybody can roll their eyes that people drive through, but there are actually a lot of reasons why it happens, because it does happen quickly. And in these surveys that we have, we ask people, is there anything you want to add? And I have a couple of these quotes, and they just give a sense of the the rapid nature and the lack of control. Yes, there are people who, aren't being careful, but there are also people with different circumstances. Also people who have to get to work or getting children, they'll end up taking more chances and things like that. So just really, so as part of this, we're really trying to understand the whole problem. So I'm going to introduce, this is just a little bit of a theory, is this notion of an integrated warning system. And this is a framework that was developed by these guys, Maletti and Sorensen, back in 1990, but it's a great framework. So basically, they look at warning systems as a whole series of inputs and outputs. So first, there's the environment, which makes weather and, there are creeks and streams and surfaces and everything. And then there's a detection system that's trying to find out information about that system. And that does it through sensors and models and everything. And it's not perfect.
Sensors like the ones they have down on Trinity Boulevard.
Absolutely.
All Trinity Boulevard has sensors everywhere, but it floods You sneeze and it'll flood.
And it'll, yeah, and so they have those kinds of sensors. They have radars. It's really, you know, it's really all the models, and also the people who have the expertise, the forecasters and everything, to do that. And then so once there's enough risk, and the forecasters determine that, they issue warnings. And then it's up to this management subsystem that you see right here to figure out, like, what are you going to do now with the warning? Now you have this information. How are you going to protect local people? Are we going to close off roads? Are we going to send out people? And so they have to manage that and also disseminate this warning to get it out to, you know, a sufficient number of people. And then you have the response system, which is just the general public who are out living their lives, and they need to respond to these weather events, kind of, you know, intervene in their lives, and you have to do something. And so what makes warnings, you know, what they found out is that people really you have to receive a warning, you have to get it in the first place, you have to understand it, and then people really have to personalize it. They have to feel like it's relevant to them in order to do what they need to do. And so if they have multiple sources of the warning that are consistent, that works really well. But if people are unsure, they'll wait for more information or they won't take action. And so what you're doing is you're combining these systems, and they're very different kinds of systems, and they operate in different kinds of ways. You're trying to get them to operate together to have the least impact. And so that's the perspective we want to take. And then the other thing I just want to point out is there are all these kind of information flows going back and forth. So this is the risk assessment that comes from this detection system here. And it gets fed back ground truth information to validate what's going on, because models and sensors are uncertain. And so you need to understand whether they're working. You know, ground truth comes from the responses. If you're calling for rescues, that's a source of ground truth. And so that needs to get back to forecasters. And so there are all these information flows. And if these information flows don't work, then the system isn't going to work. And so that's the perspective that we were taking when we were trying to look at this case.
Even information like spotters who are out there
Absolutely.
seeing it with their own eyes, and who are trained to know what they're looking for.
And that's very important for forecasters when they, you know, they're looking at radar data, they're looking at all of these data that's not perfect. And so they really do rely on that ground truth. And you'll see that that was actually an issue in this case. So what we did was we created a base case that didn't have the CASA data. And then we looked at, like, well, what would happen if you had CASA data? Would there be any enhancements? And we got a lot of data. So we, NWS has this MRMS, which is the multi-radar, multi-sensor data that they use for rainfall data. We had that. We had some NexRad data. We looked on NWS Chat, because NWS Chat is where the Weather Service provides all their analysis to the emergency managers in the community. If you think about that arrow, it's one of those communication routes where they're saying, well, you know, we're about to issue a warning, we're seeing these. It's also where ground truth is reported. And so that's a great kind of place for information sharing. We have information from the city of Fort Worth. That's what CFW means. They have a whole high water warning system, which is gauges and road sensors that they use to manage their response. We got the logs from fire, stormwater, and police, all the logs that they did, where and when they did that, including the rescue calls for stalled cars. And then in CASA, we were doing these surveys of the public, and we did a survey on this date, on the September 8th date. And we got about 500 surveys of people, about 95 of which kind of came to a flooded road. So we kind of have all the pieces to put together that warning system that I just talked to you about. And we can look at how they worked and try to make connections or look for where disconnections were. So what you're seeing here is another view of the detection system, the management system, and the response system that I spoke about. And I'll be talking about that a lot, along with the different sources of data. So this is, for instance, the MRMS, and you can see that the water kind of goes up And these are the number of their high water warning alarms in the city of Fort Worth. And then these are the management system in green are the responses by police and fire. So you see this kind of lag. Here's the water building up, and then you see the response starting to happen. So you see police and fire and stormwater going out and addressing different issues that are going to happen, that are happening. And then you see in the response system, you see three things, the calls for rescues and stalled cars, as well as what we're calling flooded road encounters. And those are the surveys that we did when people got to an intersection and they saw flooding. So again, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You see this, the water goes up, you see the impacts of this. And then you see some kind of delayed impact, because that's what happens when you have a big event, but eventually it goes down. So we use these pieces of data to really analyze it and see where we had, disconnects and connects. So what I'm going to do is, then one other thing, this is kind of complicated, but we looked at 3 periods. We kind of called the early period emergence, where things are happening. And then we had the peak, which is when the flash flood warning was issued and all the activity was happening, all the impacts were happening. And then the aftermath, which is like at 11. And so the times to think about was the warning was issued at 9:38 in the morning. And all the events and all the response and everything happened between like 10 and 11. And then things start trailing off. So if you just think about those times. So I'm going to talk, and just so I don't talk on forever, I'm going to talk about the peak time and the NWS warning. And you can see this warning right here. This is the warning that they gave. And what happened was that they had uncertainty in the data. Uncertainty at that time, the MRMS data was underestimating rainfall, and they had gauge data. So there was an uncertainty in the data in terms of what was going on. So this warning that you see is what I'm calling an everyday warning, an everyday flooding warning. And I looked at all the flood warnings for 2018, and they all have this template. And sometimes though, you'll see, oh, there's ongoing flooding, or where, this is serious flooding, but this is the template. So if you're receiving this, and this is what gets disseminated to everybody, you're thinking, typical, I'm a tough North Texas person who doesn't, do anything until it rains 3 inches an hour. I'm just going about my business. I'll be aware, but this isn't catastrophic. And you can compare that to the flood in August 22, the past August, which was really serious, and they knew it, and they were out there telling people to be careful. That wasn't happening with this. So during the peak, there was this kind of data uncertainty, and these 2 images that we have here, maybe you can go on to the next one here. So these are the gauges, and the hotter the color, the higher the rain, you can see. And this is the MRMS data. And if you focus on just this area right here, which is the area that we're interested, you can see that these are in the red and orange phase, whereas it's a little hard to see, but this is more in the green and the yellow phase. So you can see kind of the underestimation and that there's uncertainty. Now, the other really important thing that happened during this, and I'm not sure why, whether it was, I think this has changed over time, was that Fort Worth wasn't providing any ground truth. They didn't, through this whole time, there was no ground truth provided in NWS chat in terms of what was going on with the event. So given that you have this data, it's not really unreasonable to issue a warning like this, at this stage in time. So that's kind of the NWS side of this peak event. But on the other hand, during the peak, and what this is very hard to see, but this is just a map of the city of Fort Worth with all the different rescues and flooded waters and everything that was going on, just to show that there was just a tremendous amount of activity going on. So that was going on, but the Weather Service didn't necessarily know that at that time. So I think that's a real disconnect in this communication system that you see. Now, the NWS warning was widely disseminated, both in the media, and also Fort Worth has Nixle, that call out system that they use. Now, the deaths occurred around 10, but they weren't actually able to retrieve the cars and the bodies till much later. So the NWS didn't necessarily know about that because the city of Fort Worth was doing that, and they have procedures that they have to go through and everything like that. So, I mean, you see this, it's a very rapidly evolving event. So to be able to keep up with it, I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. So these aren't meant to be criticisms. This is just kind of documenting, what's going on. So then we also have the public during this peak time, and we asked the public, what information sources did you use before and during the event? So were you aware of that there was going to be rain and there was going to be potential flooding? And most people were. And what were the information sources? And so the blue is before the event. And you can see that radio, internet, weather apps are very popular. You can, and people use multiple sources, which is what you see. But as the event starts, which is the red hashed lines, you can see that people are realizing that the event is happening by just experiencing the heavy rainfall. We're talking about motorists here. So they're in their car, and so they're driving around, and it starts raining really, really hard, and they know that the weather event has happened. So they're kind of in a bit of a vacuum, when this is happening. So you can imagine that. So that was one really interesting thing that we found that was actually quite striking, how the other sources went way, way down for motorists, and then this, just being physically in the space and observing it and trying to make decisions is very important. And I'll just mention here that, there were about 500 responses. 216 people drove in the rain, and of those, 95 got to a flooded road. So, it goes kind of less and less and less. And then we asked people, when you got to a flooded road, how deep did you think it was, and did you go through or not? So you can see that almost 60% of the people went through when they got to the flooded road, and 41% turned around. And then we asked them what was the depth of water. And, it's really, it's interesting when you look at the 6 to 12 inches, because you'd think that people should really start to turn around there, but still the majority of people are still going through. And it's really when if you combine that 12 to 24 and greater than 24, then the majority of people are turning around, but just like 50%. So, so what's going on there? Are people, is the information not geographically specific enough? Are people disregarding it? I think there's a lot of, questions that are raised by this, and you can think about what are the impacts on the warning system?
I think a lot of people just think that they can do, oh, it won't bother me, I can get through that. No, it won't push me off into the ditch or take me down the river. All right, I'll be all right, I can get through that little water.
Right.
And then they get down and they find out, oops, it's deeper than they thought it was.
I know, it's true. And so here's an interesting thing. We asked people about different factors to rate them, whether they're a strong influence or not an influence in their decision to either divert or go through. And so what you see here is that the expected diversion rate, the expected rate is the 41% of the people who turned around, right? So you see, seeing vehicles turn around, 66% of the people turn around. So seeing other people turn around makes you turn around. Having barriers, physical barriers, flashers, or public safety is very effective. The rain duration, again, more effective, and the perceived water level. All those are things that push people to actually turn around. Things that make people go through are confidence in their vehicle, people with trucks and et cetera. Seeing other vehicles go through, past experience making it, and needing to get to kids or work. I mean, there are a lot of people who will lose their job if they don't get there on time. And again, those people take chances. So it was interesting to look at those significant ones, and some of the ones that weren't significant. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. Okay, so let's see. So we're getting towards 8 o'clock. So what should we do now?
We got started late, so.
It's okay to keep going. Is that? Are people are okay?
I'm happy.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
learning a lot of
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next thing I think is that I told you we had these open-ended answers where people could just tell us what they were doing and what they were thinking, and you can get a sense of things. You know, this one, when I drove out on it and my vehicle stalled out because of the amount of water on the road, it was raining so hard that I was unable to tell that it was flooded. So this was a person who just couldn't see. You know, multiple roads were flooded, some blocked and others not. I had nowhere to go. The water rose up quickly as if a dam burst while I was driving through. Smaller cars stalled out. You know, other cars made it through, so I followed. That's what we saw, and that's what you hear a lot.
I think the most dangerous time would be nighttime when there's not a lot of light in an area where you're going down the road where there's very little light and you can't see really see the road much.
Right.
And you come up on the water and it's already there before you know it. It's already up to you.
Right. Absolutely. It's really, it's definitely true. And I think you see many more fatalities for nighttime floods because of that. People can't see. But anyway, this is just to say there's a lot more behind, why people go through. So if you think about the takeaways, and if we think about this warning system that we looked at, so that, when you look at that NWS warning, it addressed the overall area of risk where there was heavy rain, but it didn't really address the kind of the within area risk well. And when you look at that warning, there was a warning update at 11, and it still didn't emphasize that there were ongoing rescues or anything like that. It was still very like you probably will see flooding, but not that there's serious flooding going on and you need to be careful. So it never actually kind of converted to a kind of a significant event. And when we saw how there's the data uncertainty and the lack of ground truth that contributed to that. We see that the city actually has its own high water warning system because they need a level of precision that the NWS data isn't providing at this point. So they have the road sensors and everything to understand where they need to go and things like that. We talked about the city not providing important ground truth. And now, again, remember, they had deaths that they were dealing with. They had all kinds of things that they were dealing with. So I think it's improved actually over time where, and you guys might know this more, where, with tornadoes, everybody's out there reporting stuff, but with flash floods, it's been a kind of a slower pace to get people to report in ground truth, even though it's important to do. So I think that's been something that's been worked on since this study was done and has improved.
It's so fast that by the time people, say someone's on one side of town, they get to where that flooding is to see it now and report it. It's already
Right.
done and gone, and the person's already washed away.
Right. And then again, it's a fast-paced, threat. And then there's like an issue with the technology of warning systems. I mean, are people in cars really able to receive appropriate warnings to really know what's happening, and do they know what's happening? And that's like a technology issue almost. So those are some of the issues that this raised for us, and you could see that this ground truth like little arrow here was clearly broken during this event, and then you can also see how the tone of the warning influences how people respond, because that gets promulgated out to everybody. So then we did an enhanced case, and we included the CASA data that we had at that point and said, are there any benefits to this? And we had been working a lot with the city of Fort Worth, and they had a heuristic where they like to look at the 15-minute accumulation. And when the 15-minute accumulation got more than 3/4 of an inch, they saw flooding, especially in the center city. It would happen like at a 1/2 inch because all the infrastructure there is so old. But generally it was about 3/4 of an inch. So we had been running this 15-minute accumulation product. And so, you know, what happened in this event, and you see it actually in the CASA 1 hour data, is that it accelerated, so it intensified so rapidly that if you were looking at 1 hour data, even with 2-minute updates, it would take a long time before it would show the intensity of this event. And so that's what you see here. So this is the 1 hour MRMS data, which was also a little low in this event too, at the time of the warning. Okay, and these colors are scaled so that you could compare them. So for instance, you know, this is about 6 or 7 inches, I think, because it's in millimeters, unfortunately. And then this is 50, so it's divided by 4, so you can compare the colors. So the CASA 15-minute accumulation, you know, at this time is showing a really intense event going on, whereas the 1 hour data isn't.
Is that the NextRad data on the left?
On the left, it's a combination of NextRad and sensors that are combined.
Yeah, because I mean, the picture on the right shows the advantage of a 3-centimeter radar. And NextRad's a 10-centimeter. And when I heard about CASA coming in, I loved it because when I first got into the weather business, I was with the Air Force on a 3-centimeter radar. And you can see things on that 3-centimeter that you can never see on a 10-centimeter.
So, I mean, I think that's true, but I think also the shorter accumulation period that can address these rapidly intensifying events is also, you know, very important.
It's good to know where all the typical places are that will flood when we have a heavy rain. Now, like Hewlin and Camp Bowie always floods there when we have heavy rain, or Hewlin and 30 always floods right there when we have heavy rain. That's some of our worst places. And up on the north side, there's a park out there. Some of the roads go through the park.
That gets it. And so, you know, so the interesting thing is that, like, for different places, you could have different thresholds that are, you know, and so for one area, it might be when it reaches 3/4 of an inch. For another area, it may only be a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch. So you can start to kind of match the rainfall data to the risk. And again, if this is the warning area right here, this starts to give you to the ability to warn within the warning and talk about the most intense area and maybe have more confidence in some of those cases where it's really hard to tell. So I think that's really the advantage of that data.
You have the data from all these times before, you know how much it takes to make that area flood. And you know, when you see it on radar showing it's flooding, that much rain is coming down, you know that certain location will flood, and you know to get someone out there to block it off or make sure people don't go into that, or whatever needs to be done.
Right, yeah. So we were really, so we were very encouraged, you know, when we saw this, and then the city of Fort Worth is continuing to look at this and seeing that this is, you know, really an advantage for them to be able to look at this at high resolution and at the shorter accumulation. And we actually made another product for them, which we call a max 15-minute accumulation. So it looks at the data, it looks at over an hour, what was the maximum 15-minute accumulation that occurred in any spot. So it shows like, okay, this area is getting pounded by rain. And so they use that. And again, that came from them and their heuristic experience. And then we were able to, you know, create a product, and then they can feed back and say, oh, well, this works, this doesn't work, and things like that.
That 15-minute
accumulation is what the city of Fort Worth uses as a standard for designing storm sewers, inlets, and such as that.
Right.
5-year, 15-minute storm.
Right. So this also can correlate to return
5.5
rates. Yeah.
inches per hour.
And so they definitely do that. Yeah. And so this is a kind of an interesting graph where we looked at, this is the warning when the warning was issued, and then we looked at the 15-minute data. We also had 30-minute data, the CASA 1-hour data, and the 1-hour MRMS. And so this we basically divided it by 4 so we could compare them. And you can see, and so this is a very visual way of seeing how the 1-hour data kind of underestimates what's going on in an intense event, whereas with the 15-minute data, you can see that there's this intense increase in rainfall, right away. So, so somewhere in between 9 and when they issued the warning, probably you might have issued the warning. So you could have warned earlier, and you could have warned more geographically specifically. And so we'll start looking at more and more cases, obviously, to see, is this a one-off or is this a good thing? But it looks like it's a pretty kind of valuable lesson, especially in urban areas, especially in areas with a lot of development where you have this rapid response with rain. So conclusions and also more questions, because that's what always happens. So we saw that the shorter accumulation period caught the rapidly intensifying event at an earlier time period. And you also see the potential for building forecaster confidence as they're trying to understand which events are intense and which aren't. And we've talked about some of these things, these accumulation thresholds that you could create over time and just have these real-time products that are very tailored to the specific geography. And I think there's also the potential for helping the cities and being more proactive in terms of how they deploy responders, how they may block off roads, and what they're doing. I think also that, when the public gets to a flooded intersection, the average person, they have to make a very fast decision, and it's not always the most rational decision. And so I think the more that you can help people avoid flooded areas, either through the road network or through earlier and more kind of more consistent warning, then I think that has a lot of potential also.
I think with this data, it would help cities to understand where the flooding is, and they can try to get more money to maybe fix the drainage in that area or whatever needs to be done to maybe fix that area, or maybe bring the road up or something where it won't be potential of that again. If it's a place it always does flood.
I think that's true. And then the other question is, could they provide the basis for a much kind of more geographically targeted flash flood warning for the general public? Again, when you get a flash flood warning, they're typically, 1 to 2 hours, like 2 hours actually or more. And so if you're driving around and you have this kind of large area and there might be a flood anywhere in that area, it's very hard to take very specific action. But again, if somebody tells you Lake Arlington just got a record amount of rain, it's a dangerous area, stay away, then you would probably do something. And so that could form the basis of much more targeted warnings. Okay, so that's my presentation, and be happy to take any more questions.
I think the National Weather Service has done here in the last couple of years, and that is they targeted to their warnings more to the area instead of just the whole county, instead of to more of a smaller area. And I think that's really helped a lot.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. Yeah, but even within the polygons, because this warning was a it wasn't a county-wide warning.
No, it was very small.
It was small, but it's still, if they had, really specified, kind of the physical areas of risk, I think it could have helped.
So, Brenda, I have a question. So when have you guys, is this a recent analysis or that you guys have done, or has this been shared? Because I feel like in more recent warnings, they have sometimes said ongoing rescues or like rescues underway, like in the warnings themselves that I've seen. And, but I want to say it is more recent than maybe.
Yeah, and even I looked at this was in 2018, so this is a while ago. So even when I looked at those warnings that kind of had that standard language, there were several of them that would say, "Oh, ongoing rescues happening" and things like that. The issue with this one is that some of them are and some of them are very uncertain, and there's just a lot of uncertainty, and so this would help improve that uncertainty. The other thing that I think is happening, and I see it with the city of Fort Worth, is that they are disseminating more information on ongoing rescues when they're happening. Like I see it on Twitter that, there's a rescue going on at this corner, and I think that's actually very valuable. But the question is, how's it going to get to the people kind of in the cars who need it? So I think there's something with the warning system. I'm really interested in maybe thinking about what we can do with our app with that, because we know where people are. And so we could, for instance, disseminate a warning within a 5-mile or 10-mile radius of one of these, rescue tweets or whatever, or something like that. So, I do think things are getting better. And I also think that there's been a lot of work with the Fort Worth Forecast Office and emergency managers about how important ground truth is. So, I mean, the other thing that could have happened in this event is that the city of Fort Worth was saying, we're seeing 2 feet of water at Lake Arlington, multiple rescues, and that could have changed everything. So it's, you need these multiple sources of data because nothing is perfect,
What about, I know we have not enough of them, but the new Wi-Fi systems they're putting up, like in downtown Fort Worth, they have these poles set up for Wi-Fi. Maybe if they could send out something through them for the people in that area that may be right there, if it's happening there in downtown.
Yeah.
Or any area they have that, like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's becoming a big thing now, all these little areas that have Wi-Fi set up, these companies are putting in.
Well, for the sake of time, since we have other chapter business to attend to, Brenda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It was very great. I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
It was great information.
I learned a lot.
So, whoops, we're back. All right. I guess I'm on the screen here. There we go. So Brenda, thank you so much for speaking with us. Sure. So with that, we give you an Amazon gift card.
Thank you.
For appreciation.
Great.
For doing it with us. I have questions, but I'll save that for later, because I'm sure there's a lot of collaborative work that we can do then.
Okay, great.
All right. Okay. So now down to chapter business. First up, budget. Stanley got us a nice budget here, and we are in good shape for the end of the year. We have just over $1,000 in our account, so that puts us in a really good position for the 23-24 season. So that's very good to know. Next up, chapter elections. So this is your chance to decide who the next 4 up are. So I don't know how to officially do this, so we'll just go ahead and
I make a motion that we nominate the current board by acclamation.
That works.
I'll second
that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
A delayed aye. Or Dave opposed. I don't know what happened there. So, all right. So Greg is back at our vice president. Dave is our secretary. Stanley is our treasurer, and I will be your chapter president again for the 23-24 season. I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Greg, Stanley, Dave, for helping out this year, for helping take care of things. Dave, for running the show here online with Zoom. And thank you all for participating and being part of the meetings and for asking questions of our speakers. So we appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing y'all again next year. So speaking of next year, the next meeting will be tentatively September 19th. It's usually the second Tuesday of the month, but that is the NWA annual meeting, which we're also a local chapter of. The NWA annual meeting will be in Kansas City. So I know I will be there. So we will be holding a meeting the following week. So we'll pencil in Tuesday, September 19th. Other than that, is there any other chapter business?
Oh, well, thank you for doing a good job this year.
Yes.
Send it forward.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Steve.
Yes, I managed to break things the first meeting, the last meeting. So we're going to try again next year. So other than that, meeting's adjourned. See you all in September.
I have a
Thank you
question
all.
for you, if you can answer this.
Dave, thank you so much.
All right.
When they put the.
See you guys. Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Yeah, we'll see you later.